Dale, it's good to see you. We're talking about some tech, and I thought, you know what? Let's just hit record so that people can hear this, because you've got a headset on that's pretty freaking cool. And we'll figure out what the name of it is and all that other kind of stuff. But the noise canceling and being able to hit on the background or remove background noise is awesome, which continues to go and show that you can work from anywhere in any operating environment if you're willing to confirm scope and requirements, and then go out and get the tools and tech available to help you do it, or at least build a plan to go out there and get the tools and tech. So it looks like you're in a library, but you said it's a coffee shop in Tennessee. Where in Tennessee?
Yeah, it's in Townsend, Tennessee is what the city is called. But yeah, like it's a cute little place. Those are my awesome baristas. And it's like a pitched, like traditional, like, let's just call it like cabin roof, if you will. It's cool. It's like you're in like a little log cabin, like that potentially was built in the 1800s, except this one's been updated a few times. So there's like although like it is funny because days like this, when it's kind of hot out, like if the AC isn't like cranking, you're sweating in here. And then the worst days, when you're down here in the winter and it's like 30 or 40 degrees outside, there's no heat in here. So they just like rely on, please come here and bring your body warmth, so we're not all freezing. Everybody's in here like wearing coats and jackets in the winter. It's pretty funny. Anyway, it's a quaint little spot. It's super quiet, but at the same time too, like it does get like just before this, I don't know, they had 150 people come through here in a course of an hour. And it's because like this area is right at the entrance of the Smoky Mountains. Okay. And so people don't necessarily know the area for anything more than just like, oh, this is the cool drive through the woods that everybody's going 20 miles an hour on because it's 2 lanes. And, there's 1,000 people traversing it during the summer. Right. But there's so many cool little hidden gems that make life worth living here in general. And so like for me, like people come through here and they just pass through and get a coffee. I came down here at 7 a.m. from up on a mountain right around the corner, parked my car, and I'll sit here until somewhere in the ballpark of like 3 o'clock, do my work, make my calls, get some coaching in, do some outbounding, like all the stuff I need to do. And there's 0 distractions, and I don't have to worry about people being heard to my microphones. And by the way, this is the Jabra Evolved 2. 65 flex. That's the full shebang of the name and the model. So, and I do highly recommend these. Actually, look up Joe Ingleson. He works for a great technology distributor that I bought these from. He's a rebel. Hopefully he'll be at Totality. Shout out to Joe Ingleson if you bought your ticket already, brother. But he's the one that turned me on to this. He's like, dude, you got to get one of the, like, I know you got Chris. I used to have all this software, right? So he would say, like, I know you got all this stuff, but just get this headset will change everything. And he was not lying, bro. It's freaking phenomenal.
Absolutely not lying. And it's so good that Dale pulled the headset off to kind of tell me what it was, or look at some of the numbers on it to try to figure out what the specific headset is. And as he did it and just got away from the mic, I couldn't hear him. So the noise canceling component is absolutely insane. That's freaking awesome.
Heck yeah, bro.
And what I love about the background, and I want to own a log cabin at some point in time, primarily because I want to be able to see those lines on the inside, both on the inside and on the outside, and know that all there is that log and that little bit of insulation that's there, and you get protected from the elements, but you're still dealing with whatever the heat or the cool or whatever is happening. That is a cool freaking coffee shop. And it looks like a cross between like a coffee shop and a bookstore or a library, but it's because you're right there in there where they're selling mugs and all that other kind of stuff.
Yeah, they got dope merch like Campfire Stories Volume 2 and puzzle like 100-piece, 1,000-piece puzzles, and a lot of it's Smoky Mountain themed, right? So ultimately it's just, the woods, but also like these folks do. It's called Towns Space End Coffee. So, and then the city is called Townsend, one word, right? So they just cut it up into 2 as Towns End Coffee, which I think is phenomenal. And also like Townsend, and the reason they named it that is because like this is where it all stops. Like it stops here, and then the Smokies are that way, and there's no people, so it's just bears.
What Why is it so? Why are people more and more people being drawn to getting out into nature? Maybe maybe there's this confirmation bias or recency bias that I've got going on, but it feels like more and more people are being drawn back into nature. What's going on?
I would agree with you though. I don't think it's a bias. I think it's an observation that it's not even nature as much as just like, so I'm born and raised in Orlando, Florida. I'm third generation, and which is a crazy thought, right? There's not a lot of us, but they're still are us is the thought process. And our experiences have been that we've only ever known as being somebody like built into the city, if you will, traffic, lots of people, anger, road rage, options galore, wait times out the yin yang, bad attitudes. And not to say that there's not good stuff that comes along with it, but these are the highlights, right? Because they're so consistent, really like you have a good day in the area and it's hard to remember it, to be quite frank. The things you love about it, like, is like being a kid when none of those things mattered, and that you have to participate in that. And like, if we went into a restaurant and then we walked out and left because the wait was too long, it's like, man, it's kind of non-consequential to me as a child. I'm just following my dad and my mom around and doing whatever they tell me to do. So whatever, I don't, have any place to be tomorrow other than get some school done. So I think, growing up in that environment there's no consequence to it other than becoming too comfortable. My father always kept us very uncomfortable, to be quite frank with you. So he would challenge the narrative of like doing the same thing over and over again. He would challenge the narrative of becoming complacent. He would challenge the narrative of like that we had somehow hit this limit of growth and that there was no further place to go. And because of that, I think for me personally, it was an easy decision to sit back and say, oh, what have I been taught all my life? What are the things that have been cultured around and ultimately that I've noticed like have created the biggest change in my walk? And it was easy to kind of say like, well, maybe for clarity's sake, I should just kind of get out of my typical environment and go seek out some discomfort in strange places. And I did that. I started in New York in a city called Lansing, which is, I don't know, 1,000 people, right outside of Ithaca, which is a college town. It's pretty big, surrounded by what they call the Finger Lakes, which is like the greatest wine region in all of the United States. Shout out to the Finger Lakes. I don't think Jacqueline would be very happy with me saying that. I think she likes the California region, but yeah, I'm going to go on the limb here and say I think that area is the best wine region. But like Aurora or, just all these cities that are around there, Oswego, that, a couple hours away, like they're so small. Even if they have like 4,000 or 5,000 people, like, man, you show up and they don't recognize you and they go, what's your name? And within like, even in Ithaca, like within like 2 days, man, of living up there we were there for 2 months, living there for 2 months. And within 2 days, this coffee shop, they would see me park out in the parking lot. She had to walk like, I like to park far away, I should say also, but you had to, walk like a solid, like 2 New York blocks, basically like through their parking lot into the building when you park like far away from all the other cars. They'd see me like walking down the sidewalk to come in and bro, they would make my coffee order.
That's awesome.
And if I had my son with me, they knew he liked apple juice and they'd have it ready. And sometimes they wouldn't charge me for that stuff. Sometimes they'd be like, hey, it's on us today. Thanks for coming in so often, things like that. But they'd be like, hey, Dale. At first, it almost felt like I was part of some sick joke that I wasn't in on, I was like, what's going on? And then I realized it was just like compassionate, genuine, awesome people that believed in community and wanted you to feel a part of what they had built for themselves. And in Lansing, like we were in the woods, basically like on the Finger Lakes in the woods. And my wife and I just found so much pleasure and ultimately like happiness through this idea of like going to places where there wasn't a lot of people and just nature. But still knowing that like people are what make up our lifestyle and ultimately a part of our happiness as well too. We're not introverts, but she is, but more than I am. I have 17,000 phone numbers in my phone, like that's a real number, by the way. And, so for me, it's like, okay, did I see myself like exiting to the woods? No. But do I absolutely love it here? Yes. And I would never trade it. If I went and stayed in the city for a couple months, I could see myself doing that and then just like coming back to hit reset and be a part of, something that's bigger than me, that challenges me, that makes me think differently every day. Like you can watch a sunrise on the Smoky Mountains for 2 consecutive weeks straight because I've done it in like, 5:30 to 6:30 in the morning, just depending on like daylight savings times and everything, up on a ridge. And I'm telling you, dude, every single one of those 14 sunrises are different. They feel different. They smell different. Like as weird as that sounds, the air quality is different. The trees sway a different direction. The bugs hum different. The light shines and reflects off the clouds different. Hits the peak different. I mean, it's just incredible. And look, like maybe what if you like recorded all of them, they all look the same, you know. But the human experience and the emotional piece that drives us deeply comes to life in those moments. And it latches to this like being new every time, just from small changes in the environment around you. And I think that that's what really captivates me about this place is that like change exists on a daily basis for me. And so I don't live in comfort or stagnation. And I think that people are searching for that. Like 2020 sucked. Everybody's sitting at home, stuck in a place they thought, oh yeah, I could live the rest of my life here. And all of a sudden everybody's like, I don't know about this. This is gonna suck, and like they stop talking to each other, right? Friends and family groups, and they stop visiting with each other regularly. And then one day you just wake up and you're like, man, everything is different and I'm alone here, even though I'm surrounded by all these people that I love and I grew up with and I created community with. And honestly, I don't think it's 2020 that really created that. I think it's always been that way. I think it just really showcased the severity of it. But like I was just having a conversation about this with Beth Pagano about how we were sitting in a bar one day and a friend of mine was like, how long you been coming to this bar, Stacey? He's like 34, and like takes a drag of a cigarette, like, back in the day when you could do that at a bar. And I remember the guy turning to me that I was with, and he was like, 34 years, this guy's been coming here like Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, like same time, like it's his ritual. And I was like, man, I kind of thought about that for a second. He out loud, he goes, that sucks. I don't want to do that. I don't want to sit here in this like stagnant place, like doing what makes me feel good, having the same conversations, the same arguments, the same thing over and over again. I think moments like that in my life really started to set me free around the way that I think. I was meeting with a guy recently. I'm on a tangent here, but I was meeting with a guy recently and he said, man, I love what you and your family are doing, traveling all over the place in a van, sometimes a rental car, whatever, in Airbnbs, whatever. Like y'all are killing it. I could never do it. I like my boat. I like my coffee shop every morning, same place I go to. I like the consistency of that. And I'm like, like, but what's it masking? And you say you could never do that because you think very linear, right? But what if somebody challenged you to think outside the box and more abstract for just a minute? And you can't say I can never do something that I haven't ever tried in the first place. I don't think humans were made to just like be in the same place their whole life, quite frankly. I mean, that might sound a little nuts, but I don't believe that. I think you can build a community from a distance. I believe that you can have a sabbatical for 9 months and come back and still have the same relationships. I believe, especially in the world that we live in today, because of the reach and the ability for me to be on the phone with somebody in Japan right now, if I wanted to. It's a little late over there, but or early, I guess you would say. But again, the point being, we have access now. So why are we using it? Why are we so afraid to use it? Why are we so stuck in our ways? Why are we sitting in the same place over and over again, doing the same shit over and over again, expecting things to be better? And that's why I think people visit the woods, Mike.
It is when you get out there and do things, you can reflect on them. You can't reflect on what you're going to do. You have to do it, and then you can reflect. And when you reflect, you can start to say, hey, did this work for me? Did it not work for me? Did it, am I stuck someplace? You're like, what's working, what's not working? Where am I stuck? Like all of those kind of things, those questions that you can ask. And then you can start to say, hey, you know what? I actually want to do more of this, or I want to do less of that. And when you have conversations with people, so think about that bar discussion, 34 years inside the bar, coming to the same place over and over, taking a drag of a cigarette and having a little bit of a drink and doing it on Tuesday, Thursday, and whatever day. It could be from that person's perspective that things change every day. The music changes, the view of what's up on each of the bottles change, or the conversation they have with the bartender, just like the sun set changes in the Appalachians. And we can all start to see a beauty in something if you pause and take time to observe the beauty rather than going through and just keep doing the motions. Like I play as much golf as I can. Like part of what I've designed, what we're doing right now, is to allow me to go out and do the things that I want to do when I want to go and do them. And we as a family do the things we want to do when we want to go out and do them. One of those things that I like to do is walk 9 holes at least three times a week or 3 days a week. And I'll take a lot of the same pictures over and over again, but they'll be slightly different because depending on where you are, the sun's going to reflect on the water a little bit different, or the trees are going to blow a little bit different. I think the thing that I took away from being in the Smoky Mountains or being in the woods that you just share is live. Don't just go through the motions, like live. And sometimes people struggle with figuring out what living means to them. What's living mean to you?
A great question. It's a big thought. I, I think ultimately, like a lot of people can boil down life to the simple stuff, though.
Yeah.
That they could say, like, living is I'm aging to die, or living is I'm in certain seasons of my life. I'm trying new things. I'm doing college here. I'm doing a career here. I'm doing retirement here. So, like, some people like to box things in that way, if you will, to make themselves feel better about life. I think life is a mystery, bro. That's what I think. I think the only constant, like for me as a man of faith, like the only constant for me is my personal relationship inside of my faith, and ultimately the identity of that. Like, this place is not my home. That's the one thing I always come back to for myself. And so, like, every day when I wake up, it's like that reality, while also saying, man, but like the thing is that this place is such a blessing for us, like during this window of time that we do have, and that squandering it is insane to me. And like, I'm not against like the standard way of living, if you will, but like at the same time, I chose not to do any of the normal stuff that people did. I mean, I was a musician by 17 on a record label, touring the United States. I skipped college. I went into sales because I had no degree. I had no business background. It felt like the only thing I could potentially do. But then I realized, like, halfway through that career, man, I didn't even have to do this. So really all I had to do was just like come up with a good idea and something that people needed. And then ultimately to go and like build a community around the desire and need for that thing. And then be altruistic in the way that I approach that thing and not take advantage of people. And that could be a long, happy thing in my life and in my journey, if you will. But then there's the caveat, there's the thought of just like, what else? You know, it's like, well, what are the things that on earth that have been given to us that are enjoyable? Like, man, the five senses is what I always think about, right? Taste, touch, like, so to me, it's like, man, why would we squander that stuff? Like, people who sit on their phone all day, or they might think they're activating their senses because they're like vicariously exploring the world, with their brain and their visual through others' experiences, but they're not. All they're really doing is getting a dopamine hit that eventually becomes like a neutral state. The dopamine hit is more like a need for nicotine, if you will. It's an addiction, is what it is. And it's less of like an enjoyable place. But what really ultimately comes is like stress and anxiety. That's what really actually like shows up. And man, I'm just not interested in any of that. I don't feel the need to be a part of any of that. I want to, like, with my senses, I want to like go put my hands on rocks that I'm climbing on a trail with my son, who's lighting up my audio senses, my audible senses, by saying things like, "Dad, look at this," and then like teaching him and like giving myself that release of like things I do know about, when we're like this lizard, this gecko we just found, like, and then ultimately like being curious, being open, being unconditional in the love I have for people, experiences, places. Like, I don't like when people say, "Oh, I hate that." I really don't like that. Even me saying I don't like that part of people, to me, is like a travesty that I even feel that way in the first, like, because I should technically, in my own teaching here, I should love that about people, right? Because where I'm getting at is that why can't people just be curious? And even if they don't like the experience, like the taste of sushi, like the thrill of a roller coaster, why wouldn't they embrace the fact that it exists? And instead of being like, oh, I don't like that stuff or I hate that and avoid it at all costs, why wouldn't they just like accept the fact that it's not necessarily something that makes them comfortable or that they like? And remember too that most things in their life that they are today as like attributes, personality types, like everything, that was all conditioned over time. And so like if I hate sushi when I'm 18 years old, the thing is I probably ate it when I was like 6 or 7. And I just one day woke up and didn't want it anymore. And like created my own aversions. And really like if I'm a 40-year-old male that's lived in the same city for his entire life, man, it's a travesty to me. It's a travesty. And it's not even about the living, like it's about like the exploration of other things, new people, new places, the idea of finding yourself, if you will. And that's not a linear path, man. That's like, me and Beth, again, me and Beth are having some deep conversation, but me and Beth are just talking about like, it should be a circle. And like, people shouldn't be so worried about getting to the end of the circle and starting over again from the beginning. Like, it should be something that they seek and that they're excited about. It really should. Like, they should look at the circle as like, cool, I'm starting here today. I'm going to do my circle and I'm hopeful when I get to this part of it that I'm like, whoa, sick. See all that stuff that I did and I experienced? Cool. Let's do more. Let's try new. Let's go again and keep the process like at the forefront and not and less of like the destination at the forefront. You know, I just feel like, man, I just feel like we're all dumbed down in a sense by the world to just think a certain way, act a certain way, live a certain. I buy my groceries from Publix or Wegmans or whatever, you know, store I go to, and it's like none of the food is real. And I get a soda when I go out to eat dinner, and it's like that isn't a real thing either. It's a supplement to make you happy and then also kill your body. And like I'm not getting conspiracy theory here by any means or like saying that soda, I don't approve of you drinking soda, but I am saying like, why don't we question these things? Like you've been brushing your teeth with the same white toothpaste with the blue thing in it for your whole life. But then when I say, oh, I use a powder that oxidizes my mouth, you're like, oh, that's gross and weird. And why would you do that? Instead of saying, maybe I've been conditioned to think that the way I do it is right when really it's wrong this whole time. That's what rebellion is all about. It's not about like pissing people off or burning things down or having a different opinion even, bro. It's just about the authenticity of being curious about what else is there, what else could potentially be considered normal that I don't see as normal because I've never experienced it or that people have never taught me in that way. I feel like the old world is the best place to learn from too. So like traveling to places that are untouched, back to the mountains, right? People come here and it's like, this place has all actually been completely cut down, right? Like like there's only small places where you can go and see 1,000-year-old trees, right? But for the most part, this place has been cut the hell down, right? But again, it's the idea of like nothing was developed, right? So the rock is the same, the mountain is the same, the animals are descendants of other animals that have been here, kind of thing. Like that to me, there's beauty in that, and people are looking for answers in those places, even though none of that stuff speaks, right? It's just a feeling. It's an emotion that we get to spend 10 minutes enjoying. Then we go home and we go back to our high rise and we go back to commuting to work, 45 minutes in traffic and, living out the rest of our dull, boring shit lives, So there you have it, bro.
So here's something you could do. If you want to not live out the rest of your boring shit life, and we're going to talk about totality here in a little bit, but if you want to take that experience, there are two things that I've been able to do that help me take experiences from other places and bring them back to wherever I am. The two things I do, I will either listen to a song while taking in that experience. So now there's this kind of like click whir that happens when I hear the song, I am taken back to this place. And this place means observing, like not just looking right in front of me, it's looking further out. So one of the things back in the day when I used to work out, when I would ride by back from the gym, I'd go down the hill and always would look at the mountain that's just to the south of our neighborhood. And out here in Arizona, this is a mountain that is like elevation is like 2,500 feet. So we're not talking very, very tall, but relatively speaking, it was something bigger than me. and something further out, and which gives this kind of feeling of future. So for me, it's have a song while observing this thing and just having it go in the background. Ideally, the song doesn't have a lot of words, just some kind of something that creates that experience. The other thing is find a smell, whatever that smell is, and you can bring that smell with you, whatever it is. But if you have that either that sense of smell or auditory sense, I think it can help you pair it with that experience, and you can take yourself back into like this meditative state of for me it's being at the ocean, like I need to be by water. But there's something about me that pulls me to water, and for Jen it pulls her into the mountains. So going out and finding places where you've got a combination of water and mountains are really good, but it's this bigger than self and connection to something else that can kind of create that bit of an experience. And then you can start to feel really good with your thoughts and not get into this whole, should we do this or shouldn't do this, or that doesn't work, or this doesn't work. Look, everything freaking works. If it didn't work, you wouldn't be here. Like, if you hadn't figured out how to do the work that works, you would not be taking up space right now on this rock. So everything works. The hard part is figuring out what works for you as you go through it. And this is one of the experiences I think you get, or I got out of being in the room last year at Totality and just seeing the engagement and the interaction that people had when they had a couple of props at a table and had to build stories around a couple of props at a table, or they were prompted with different questions and had to work through a specific experience. And the key for me, again, is everything works. The hard part is figuring out what works for you. And figuring out what works for you doesn't mean you have to tell somebody it doesn't work for them. Like, that's their stuff, not your stuff. So let's talk about Totality.
Totality. Totality is a vision that I had back in 2000 and probably like 18 era. If I really think about it, it was spurred on before I started the Sales Rebellion. I was at a conference, and I believe I'm not going to say who was at it. Actually, I'm not even going to guess. Let's try to guess. There was 4 speakers in total, and they're all the people that you're probably thinking that are listening to this now, and definitely what who Mike is thinking. But status quo, folks, and ultimately, I just remember leaving thinking, wow, I paid $198 to basically get like told how successful these other people were and that I need to do their thing by buying their playbook. And like, honestly, it's what LinkedIn is in 2025. It's those posts that are like, I made $97,000 last month and you can do it too with my framework. Just comment farts, in the sky, and I'll send it. It's just such a dumb, clickbaity, disingenuous concept. And I just remember leaving thinking like, none of these people, but none of these guys are sitting here on stage telling me all this stuff. And, there's so many people in suits and ties laughing and just like really seeking to be like a part of the crew and to have some type of like, I don't know, false recognition of being in the circle, if you will. And then, meanwhile, these guys make you feel like you're in the circle, but they just sucking your money out of you, bro. They don't care about you. And because like nobody ever asked me like, hey man, how you feeling though? How's your depression? How about that suicide attempt 3 years ago? You doing all right from that? Like nobody was in that with me, bro. They were just sitting there telling me, you don't make $97,000 a month, you're a loser. And you got to buy my thing. And in my mind, I was like, I made $97,000 in a month, no problem. I don't know if these guys even know how my industry works. That like you can do that, and then you can also have a $4,000 month. Just it's commission, like you guys. It sounds like you guys are building, things that are more stable or like some kind of disingenuous, type of product or like sales output, if you will. But I digress. The thought was conferences suck with sales leaders. They suck. And even our first promo for Totality last year was like, we've all thought this before, right? Like, I really don't like going to sales conferences because they suck. It's like we called it out pretty heavy. And this time we're leaning more into the idea of like we've built something very radical and proved the process and seen a lot of really cool results from it in many different forms and facets, from people adopting video more effectively into their their sales process to people, doing more creative drops to get started with a cold relationship and give an experience to people, writing, being more intentional about writing emails, a simple thing, and taking into account like all the variables and not just what's the template that's getting the most open rates. Oh, I can download that playbook for free. Let me just comment playbook, email playbook, like getting away from that perspective and narrative and really putting together very tangible concepts that also aren't like fluffed, like even Leslie Vanette, who I'm talking about with the email stuff, right? She said from stage, like, man, listen, like this is not a silver bullet, magic wand. It's not going to fix everything immediately for you. It's about trying to pick up the pace where it's not working though. Yeah. And or where it's faltering or falling flat the most, and to like identify those things. And so she told some hard truths. People in that room were like, I send emails like this. This sucks. I'm being called out right now. And I think that also because we build such a safe space for people, like there is no judgment. It's all love. And that's wrong. What's wrong with the world? Somebody sees something, they take it so personally every single time that it's done, especially on the internet. Like I notice that all the time. Like people see a comment from me and then they hit right below with just this like angry attitude. And I'm like, I go like back to my comment. I'm like, what did I say? Like, I'm not sure what's happening here. I just gave an opinion or stated my own experience. Like, why is this person losing their mind? And man, that's what we've become. I fear that it's going to just get worse over time too. And so to me, totality is this. It's a mix of like medicine and also enlightenment, if you will, and not like we're not Bible thumping on people, bro, at totality, but we are challenging them to think much deeper about their existence and about like what they're accomplishing, especially from the lens of creativity. Like, why is creativity such a lowly adapted concept in sales? And so totality is more than just the teaching and the learning, though. It's the experience. Like the agenda is not public. Nobody has any idea what's going on. The the speakers are out there, but like, what's funny, Mike, is this year there's people that are coming that aren't on the website. And maybe that's kind of giving away a couple of things, right now. We're feeling like, what? But I like that. I think that's cool. And I think people will appreciate that type of thing just the same. Like everything in life is so predictable these days. And the problem is that it's not helping. So why not take a risk and like trust some guy with a couple $1,000s of your money to make you better in a way that's not like, here's is the landing page, the 7-hour landing page that you have to read through before, you click into my funnel to start doing my thing. But instead, it's just like 10-second overview of like, hey, take a risk or don't. We don't care. Because what we're looking for are the people that they see the substance, they see the principles, they see the concepts, and they go, oh, these guys are putting a conference together too. And it has these epic people showing up to it, folks such as Mike Simmons, by the way. And they're going to be hanging out here and doing cool stuff and helping the community. Sick. And I don't even care what happens. And I think, Mike, you could agree, like last year, there was a lot of like, the secrecy was a little, there were definitely people that were like, I would never do this. Like, you're lucky I bought this ticket, but afterwards they were like, "Chill, that was sick, dude." And it was small stuff, really. Like, I don't want to ruin anything, but it's just like the small surprises that we did, or like the interactive things at the table that nobody even knew were there for the reasons that they were, right? But then slowly people picked up on it. Like just this idea of gamification and curiosity and like not knowing what's next and leading to something super fun and not abrasive by any means either. Just like a moment, like when you get to the end of it, it's just a moment of like relief, if anything. And then like, oh my God, that was like in hindsight, that was really cool and fun. And then for anybody that was there that's listening, especially for guys like Mike, like even Mike doesn't know practically anything that's happening, but he knows a little bit, right? But even the speakers, the people on my staff don't know everything in some instances, because that's the point. We want it to be something unpredictable and fun and exciting and surprising. But y'all, I'll tell you right now, I have pushed into, I think it's like gear 7 or 8. I don't even think that exists, right? But I went from like, we were in gear like 3 for the first totality, kind of like, let's go do bro, I've tripled down on that thought, and this year is going to be absolutely bonkers. from an experiential standpoint, from a hands-on creative standpoint. And I think that that will bless people.
Yeah, and I'm going to bring my son out there. So Sean's going to join. Sean's been actively getting involved in the business. We're going to create this amazing like combination of like BDR, SDR. I don't know if he's considered a millennial or whatever that age group is right now. He's 22. But we're building this inside our business primarily based on the things that he's drawn to. Like he's drawn to the research. He's drawn to the sending something out and testing things and seeing some kind of a response and then getting that dopamine hit of, hey, wow, that worked. That resonated. So as part of the exercise, I had him go look at the website and say, hey, why do you want to go to this? What are you going to get out of it? How are we going to know that this is worth the investment to do it, to bring you out there and go and do this thing? And a couple of the things that jumped out of him, one, it was like, one, it sounds really cool. There are a lot of the people that you've already asked me to follow and pay attention to that are all going to be there inside the room. And so I think this is going to be a really good investment. On my side, the primary reason I investing in it for him on his behalf, and he's investing in it by being there, is I want him to see people who are doing the work that he's just starting to get into and realize there are so many different ways to do it. So it's not that there's one right way to do it. And when all of a sudden, when you start doing it this way, it's going to unlock all of this. It's no, take perspectives of others, figure out what you want to test, then make it your own as you build through it. So I'm excited. I'm excited about it. The thing that I appreciated most, didn't expect, but appreciated most, most is a strong word, but I said this too when Totality is wrapped up last year. It was awesome to see how many people stayed in the room the entire time. It wasn't like people were getting up and going and taking calls or going to the restroom or doing any of those things like that. I mean, we're human, so the people had to do some of that stuff, but on the whole, everybody was in there. Everybody was engaged. And part of it was the experience, the suspense. I'm trying to mix both of those together, but it was the experience and the suspense that was created in the process, and then the working and teaming together as things were going along. It was absolutely awesome, and I will be there. I will be there every year that you have the event. So it's just that
Correct.
it's that cool. It's worth that. It's worth that experience. What's something you learned from last year's Totality where you're like, ooh, that didn't work as I planned, or I need to do something a little bit different, or like what's the learning and the reflective process that happened either while going through Totality or even post Totality, and you and the team have been having conversations. What's something you learned that
Yeah. You know what's crazy, dude, is that the number one thing we learned is that it's usually it's from the community itself is that we learned that we need more salads and fruit for the food. And then the lack of coffee really like buzz killed some people for sure. And like after such a heavy lunch kind of thing, that they were like grabbing, to goes at the mart down the street of caffeine, right? But what's even funnier is that like those things were on the agenda and they got unfortunately they got missed slash like we didn't think that they would be something that you forgot about, quite frankly. So, but like, there was one thing that we did do that no one seemed to know that it actually didn't work the way we wanted it to, which is really funny to me. But it was around the experience itself. And actually, what's crazy is so like imagine that you're a speaker slash workshop facilitator, as we call them at Totality, and you show up for your workshop, you do your quick like 5 minute introduction, and then like all of a sudden this guy's like passing stuff around at the table, guys and girls, and this thing is getting put down in front of everybody, and then like Dale comes up to you and hands you a copy of it too, and it's something you're presenting. You're actually it's part of your presentation. It's something that we talked about before you got there, but you've never seen. You don't know what it's going to look like, how it's going to be, but here it is all of a sudden. And dude, I think you could probably attest because I asked a lot of people about this too, but it didn't seem that when we did that stuff, that it was actually throwing people off. But what was funny was like afterwards, the speakers were like, dude, that was awesome. And it's almost like they had an experience as well with it. It was like, I love that added effect. Like KD's was all the cameras. Remember those old cameras that we put at the
Yep.
tables? And in them were Easter eggs, that like nobody knew about. And it was really funny to me to think that like he didn't even know that he knew what was happening, but he didn't know what it looked like or where the Easter eggs even were, and that people just kind of naturally found them and they just like went with it like in the process. So I feel like if anything, what we learned was this idea that more we need to be more audacious with the choices that we make to challenge the people we ask to come, to get out of their comfort zone. It's like, so one of the guys, I'm really stoked about Stan Miller for anybody listening. Stan Miller is one of the most incredible humans I've ever met. You hear his name and you think, oh, okay, seems like a normal guy. Like, bro, this guy grew up in Baltimore. I'm not going to ruin anything. I'm not going to ruin anything. I'm not going to say anything else. I heard him tell the story the first time at what we call Rebel Rally. It was our first one ever. And it's like a mini totality. It was the conception of totality. We had about 50 people in the room. And I asked Stan, I said, hey, I need you to tell your story before you do your exercise. It's very important. And he was like, well, I don't talk about my personal life, bro. And I was like, tonight you do. And I need you to do that. And I'm counting on you. It's very important. You'll see why afterwards. And bro, he did. He told his story. And I'm telling you, that room was in tears in the first 5 minutes of this guy talking. And by the time he ended it, he was like, man, it just felt right. He kind of like wrapped back into his story. God, it was so perfect, dude. And it's just this genuine moment. So anyway, he's going to be there. And he goes, man, that's, this particular part about what you told me I got to do is to make it kind of hard. And I was like, Stan, exactly. We're asking you to get uncomfortable just like I have in the past so that you can challenge yourself and you can show up so authentically and so vulnerable that it crushes the room and that every single person in there feels exactly what it is that you need them to feel before they leave. That to me is the beauty of totality and what we're doing. So again, like to reiterate, I think what we learned is that we got to push the envelope further.
Cool.
And we got to be the guys that are taking the most risks in the sales, marketing, entrepreneurial industries that nobody else will dare to take a risk around.
Dale, you are absolutely awesome. I'm really excited about this year's totality. Excited to bring Sean and experience it with him, but also hear what his experience is. I still have on the Polaroid, the old style cameras we took pictures on. I would say Polaroid, but it was even older than that. I have that picture sitting on the table that I've got next to the bed. It was that important of an experience. And it wasn't even just the experience at the event. It was being able to go out and hang out with James Buckley at his house down in his basement and have a little bit of scotch with him after the event. Like there were connections that were created last year that continue to persist and will continue to persist. Where can people go to sign up for Totality?
So thesalesrebellion.com/totality is the spot. Head there, enjoy the landing page, watch the dope video, see, all the good stuff. Get yourself psyched, hyped, ready, and then follow our streams, like just to see Sales Rebellion's LinkedIn and Dale Dupree's LinkedIn page, just to see like what highlights we might like throw out there that are secrets, technically as of right now, that we're going to divulge a little bit of information around as we go to just get the anticipation going. And ultimately, remember too, that when you're in there and you're buying your ticket, that we make it real easy for people to purchase. And what I mean by that is like, we cover the hotel, we cover your food, we cover all of your transportation while you're there. Just get a flight to Knoxville. We'll take care of you, take care of the rest from there on out. And if you're local, don't forget that there's a local option. So if you're hearing this and you're in the vicinity and you got a place to stay already, the event is not at the hotel. So you do not have to stay there. You can come from your house. We drop you coordinates. Ooh, there's a secret I just gave away. Coordinates and not an actual venue. You show up there and things happen. And from there, like it's totality on, right? So yeah, salesrebellion.com/totality. Check it out there. Grab a ticket, come join us, hang out.
So if you want to see Dale, you want to see me, you want to see some of the other people that were mentioned, go to Totality. If you know somebody else who would find this conversation valuable, interesting, share it with them. Let Dale and I know via LinkedIn. Sales is a thinking process. Business is a thinking process. Life is a thinking process. How are you thinking different about your process?